Yes, once again, we are live. We are live here with the Reentry Connect podcast. I'm your host, Keenan Hudson. And here it is that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, with a special guest by the name of Mr. Scott. Yes, a lot of people wonder about who's Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott is somebody that I knew for years, years upon years. We did time way back up in Albion, up in the mountains, the cold mountains. But I tell you what, the things that Scott been through, the things that I've been through, it's always a story to tell. And every time I get that opportunity to bring awareness, to bring some information to people, to let them know that transitioning can be a challenge, but there's always a way. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, no matter what. And like I said, when I bring guests on here, these guests are sharing their ups and downs and the struggles that they've been through. Some succeeded, some give up, but again, it's always a blessing to have people that has a story and that has success tied to it. And without further ado, we're going to dig right into it. Scott, if you just introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of you, where you come from, and what you representing, Scott.
Well, my pleasure. First of all, I thank you for allowing me to be here and share my testimony because a lot of people are struggling out there when they come out or they step out in fear, and there's really no need to step out in fear.
Mm,
I was raised in Bucks County, Langhorne,
okay.
and I graduated, went on to drive trucks. I went to truck driving school. I was a truck driver for 20 years, driver trainer, all that stuff.
Ooh,
The desire to learn about the Federal Reserve when I was 12 years old. My dad taught
mm,
me to work on lawn mowers and do farming when I was 9, 10, 11. So I have a background. It's not about whether you had father or not had a father, whether you were raised by your mother or not raised by your mother. We all have things that come up upon us. You
mm-hmm.
know, we're not immune by life's circumstances, ups and downs from choices that we make.
Yeah.
So I was never in and out of prison as a youth. Um,
Uh-huh.
I was, I'm going to say, fortunate to be married for 20 years to one wife, 3 children from the same woman, which is sometimes called for today. But
Mm-hmm.
even um, it ended in separation and divorce. But that,
Okay. Mhm.
uh,
So yeah, so I was going to ask. Okay, so at that moment when you said throughout your whole life you came up, you had a nice life, you had things going on, you were a truck driver, you were doing things that were that was outstanding. A life that anyone could dream of living, and you had these things, but then it was a turning curve when you did go to prison. How did you feel when you enter those prison walls? Now, mind you, you didn't live a criminal lifestyle. You weren't out in the streets, selling drugs. You were doing everything right. But when you went to prison, how did you feel in general? Did you feel as though that your life was over? Did you feel as though that you were going to see the streets again? How did you feel in general? Where did your hope lie?
uh, first of all, I felt upset, right? Um, I never thought that would happen to me because I always spent time planning on retiring at 40 years old. In the So when it hit me, it was like I have a choice whether I think it's over or not. I thought I'm going to say this is going to pass. Somehow I had a feeling that, yeah, I didn't see this coming, but what am I going to do in the situation that I can keep my sanity and correct what maybe have happened or the choices that I made to get me to that state? That's where,
Gotcha. So when you were in the jail cell and you were probably awaiting trial or you were looking for the outcome of the case, um, what kept your head up high? What motivated you to stay focused and then not to give in um, to any type of defeat or depression or things of that nature?
well, I was always in the scripture, like
Mm,
most people. I
okay.
was in the church. So it was funny. because the Creator used, God, my God, the Creator of all things.
Hmm.
Basically, I had a pimple on my leg and I went into isolation as soon as I entered the correctional facility, and I was isolated for 15 days.
Wow. So you was on quarantine.
15 days I was locked in a cell. That time to pray, get down on my knees, repent. I was
Mm.
crying. Guess what?
What?
God from strangers I didn't even know.
Wow. Wow.
Well, I never read books, but I read the Bible. I was in scripture, but I prayed after that. Um, there were people shoving commissary under my door. Hey, Scott, you all right? You need anything? They were shoving commissary under the door. I seen the love of something. I'm saying, like, who are these people? But I repented and prayed and cried out those days. I used the phone when people were going to chow, and it was like a sense of peace came over me. Like this
Mm.
too. Yes, I'm going to get through this.
Mm.
You know, I'm going to get through this. I don't know how long. This is temporary. I don't know what everyone else's situation is, but I'm going to get through this. So that's what got me through
That's
from the
what got you through. So they got you through. So then at that moment, you knew you were going to do time. You went upstate. Now I remember you from when we went upstate. We were working out. We were in the yard every day. We were running the track. We were in the weight pile, in the gym. We were even in the church in the chapel where you were singing on the choir. I was playing piano, singing along with you, things like that. So throughout that time of your incarceration, because I know that you was always in the law library, you know a lot about the law and things like that. Now, what type of things during your incarceration did you do to occupy your mind? Because it was a terrible thing to waste if you wasted your mind in there. But I noticed that it was always certain individuals that always occupy their mind. And what did you do that to occupy your mind?
Well, first of all, I studied the system on how it was supposed to work. Uh,
Okay.
Laws of Pennsylvania, whatever the case may be. I also didn't allow the industry to leave me behind. So I
Mhm.
always had the entrepreneurship. So I used to get entrepreneur magazines in the mail. I got my Overdrive Truck Drive magazines in the mail. I
Wow.
a little bit of accounting. There was things, and I lost my house in the process. It was going through foreclosure, so I was doing a lot of that. I was going and doing research, writing to court, getting certified copies of the deeds on who might have owned the property, the copies of the case, so I could litigate that foreclosure while I was behind bars because I thought my attorney was going to abandon me anyway. So these were the things I was gravitating on, using it as a college preparation, maybe learning a new skill, um, you
Mm.
know, just not allowing the industry to leave me behind. So when I got out there, I was prepared to pick up where I left off or walk into something better. Trucking may not have been the purpose I was created. So I was actually in prayer with God too, through my incarceration, to
Mm.
ask, what is my purpose and why I was created? So that even changed some of the precepts. Now that I'm here through success, it's still a part of what I did, but it wasn't
Mhm.
all I did because I have a totally new outlook, incredible knowledge and things that I should have had when I was running my trucking business that I didn't have, and that allowed me to get where I am today. So,
Okay. So question. So you was doing your time, you were being productive, you were definitely keeping your mind occupied. So when it came that time for you to come up for parole, for you to be released, what type of preparation did you have to do prior to you seeing the board and prior to you being released from prison?
well, basically, most people were trying to do all these programs, which you have to do programs to try to manipulate their way out of there, do it. But it's the heart and mind of you. There were a lot of reports that people were getting hits constantly. I chose not to stand on those reports. I said, I don't know about you, but I'm getting paroled. I didn't have a home plan. The house was sold for foreclosure. But once
Wow.
I wasn't staying there. That was my
So hold up. So you didn't have a home plan. You didn't have an employment plan, but here it was. You were going to see the board.
That's right. I
Wow.
answered I answered the questions truthfully, what they wanted me to know.
Uh huh.
I took accountability for my actions. I had a lot of backing from the prison. Everything that I did was not, they're professionals. They know fakes when they see them. Just
Mhm.
really try to transform your mind. Be truthful with yourself, and
Got,
the people around you will feel it, and you'll have backing from people you never even thought of. But
gotcha. So
you
now let me ask you this, Scott. So when you went up to the board and they granted you program. I remember this like clear as day. This was like 7 years ago, right? Because I remember when you came home. I remember that. We went to, you know, we did, we went shopping, different things like that. Welcomed you home and things like that. Now, when you came home, was it exactly what you expected? Did you expect a halfway house, or did you expect, searching for employment to be exactly what you thought it would be, or did you think it was complicated? How was that experience once you were released?
well, not it definitely wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was supposed to go to a halfway house out in Pittsburgh, and I was actually it was put on the paper as I read it, and I read fine print. I'm foolish when it comes to contracts, but they
Mhm.
didn't. And when I read it, it stated that I was going to be in the halfway house out there, and I would be able to go to work out there and come back to the dorm and report in and everything, report to your parole. That wasn't the
Mhm.
case. It was a 90-day lockdown.
Wow.
Were within those walls. So I was still incarcerated, and I didn't have a chance to look for a job there at that time. They were giving us
Mm.
programs, and it was funny because every time you would take one of those programs, which was YouTube videos, most of the time you were watching them and then you were discussing things. It's like program
Yeah.
after program.
So program after program. So, okay. So when you were on your job hunt, what type of things did you have to do on your job hunt?
Well, I went to a place in Philly that helps people. I did a resume, or you can find a library. Type up
Okay.
a resume or something that you want to do or what you've been through, or have somebody help you get you out there, right? Find a
Gotcha.
resume. Go to places that want to help you. Like, here's a good example. You could probably go to places that are, where they hire people, you know,
Okay.
for job, employment agencies. Let them know what you are, and sometimes they'll even transport you to work. They have
Mhm.
like transports. So I didn't get to look for a job until I got up into the Philly area because I was out in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the struggle because a lot of times they didn't want to give you a pass.
Exactly. So there was a lot of like in a way with a lot of people that do go to halfway house always has some type of issues, because of the passes. A lot of time the parole officer is giving them a hassle about a lot of things. And it's like, yo, you trying to find a job, but then they're on you because you didn't find one and the next day and things like that. So those are challenges. So I noticed you said, okay, there was a challenge with the employment, then there was a challenge with the housing as well, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So at what point did you find your first apartment?
Well, it was funny because I actually ran into a gentleman. Somehow I got a number with Harry Fisher Enterprises, and I don't quite
Okay.
remember how that went. It was just
Yeah.
like just fell into my lap. I don't know how that happened. I
Yeah.
forget. We can't tell you, but that's the way things come sometimes when you're
Mhm.
looking for work and you get out there. And I met a gentleman when I was in my travels, and he says, "Hey, we have a house for recidivism," and we started talking, and I
Mm.
actually was able to move there.
Wow. Now this was the house on Penn Street down Frankfurt.
That's exactly right.
Gotcha. So that was the reentry house that you moved into.
Right.
Now, I know that when you mentioned that you were at, that house, and then I believe then you land a job at Building Products.
That's exactly right. I
You
went
landed you landed a job at Building Products. But now let me ask you this. Now that you had living quarters, you had a place to lay your head, and on top of that, you found employment. Was it still a struggle for you through that process?
Yes, it was because I had to get my housing right.
Hmm.
Right. It could have been a struggle, but it was, it could have been worse. It could have been worse if I had to let my mind play tricks on me and tell me a lot of things that I was able to move to do I couldn't do. I had pushed back on me because I had a problem with the manager there for a little bit. And I was texting them. I was in a bad situation, and I had a friend of mine that was with me, Lori, and she actually went at them because she was a caseworker in Jersey, which they didn't know, and she was a team leader. See, you
Wow.
got people in your lives that you don't even know that are there to fight for certain purposes. So don't even close out the base when God sends you or your creator, because I know there's some people that don't know, but sends you somewhere. Follow the spirit that's in you, because the creator will bring people that you don't even know just passing by that are there to protect you. Your surrounding angel armies.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you this. Uh,
Yeah.
I pulled up, there were a bunch of parole officers at the house because
Yeah.
I was out of a bad situation that could have landed me back in jail, and I went and got a hotel because I had
Wow.
tax for a safe haven, and they wanted to give me a hit and penalize me for it. But we,
Wow.
because I had a record of the text. See, remember, if
Yeah.
you all remember anything else, when
Uh-huh.
you text messages, that is a court of record.
Mm.
The record is the court, it's not the building. Make sure you have a record that you're doing your due diligence in which you are to do, that you can go back to hold them accountable.
Yeah. 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 And yeah. And the crazy thing is, you bring up a good point. Like when it comes to the phone records, when it comes to the messages and things like that, you can always subpoena those records, in type of ways, where you can say, hey, I did my due diligence to make sure things were taken care of, accordingly, in which was required. Because a lot of people come home and forget, like, even though you might have certain restrictions, there may be certain collateral consequences of which they speak about, especially with time done, that holds individuals back, most of the time. You try to do A, B, and C, but here it is, they telling you to do D, F, and G first. So it's a lot of things that pushes people out of perspective, and it can be frustrating. But
That's
I'm
it.
here to tell you that even though through all the whole process of you transitioning, there's still going to be hope. There's still going to be light. The same way Scott just said, even though he found his employment, even though he found his housing, it was still sort of a struggle. So we can't just assume just because, we checked off a couple boxes that everything is just going to be smooth and fine and dandy and a cakewalk. However, we still stay patient. We still stay alert. We're vigilant about things, and we make sure that we're able to follow through on the things we have to follow through with. And as he mentioned, some people are going to come across your pathway to give you that support. Some people's going to come across your pathway to show that, hey, they were sent by perhaps a divine purpose.
That's right.
So, Scott, so I want you to continue, right? So when you got out of the transitional housing, not the halfway house, but the transitional house that you were in, you then landed an apartment, correct? You landed an apartment. Now, did things ease up for you, or did things get a little more complicated with your new apartment, and why?
I say it was a little bit of both. It was easy, and it was and it had to do with the other end. It went smooth as far as getting the home plan approved, but for the job that came with the housing, they were trying to put stipulations on me that were out of the bounds of the regulations put forth with me in
Gotcha.
my parole contract. See, the parole contract dictates how they're to supervise you. And the problem with that is that if you don't stand for your rights and instruct them, just like we're to instruct our representatives,
Mhm.
okay, they can do it because you're voluntarily allowing them to do it. And the thing is that if you don't defend your rights, you have no rights. A contract is only as good as if it's lawful. If it's an unlawful stipulation in that contract, that must be stripping from the bounds of the
Mhm.
contract, four corners, and everything else that's lawful can be enforced.
Mm.
So, yeah, they came up, they tried to stop, but I went at them with contract law, and they eased up and said, "You're right. Okay, we're not going to bother you." The company I was with stood by me. Some companies won't. Okay,
Got you.
to be real, there's some
Got you.
that will.
So,
Yes.
so just to make it clear, so through the process, even though you had the job, here it was, parole was still giving you complications with being at work and you having to be here, compromising whether you should go in or not. You know, I'm quite sure that could have been quite frustrating.
Absolutely.
And you still didn't give up. You still didn't snap back. That could have landed you back in prison, but you still stayed out. You still kept proceeding because you knew that if you would have went back, it would have been like all over again. You'd have been restarted all over again. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you sharing that because now that gives individuals an understanding of, hey, even though I'm going through this process, there's still going to be some challenges in life. Things are not just going to be peaches and cream, as we constantly keep saying. But however, if you're doing the right thing and you're doing your due diligence to do the correct thing, obviously the correct things will come to you. Good things will come to you. So, Scott, so within that, did you ever feel as though you will get back into your trucking business throughout that whole time?
Well, yes, and there are certain things that we can do with the recidivism that we're going to do with the houses that'll
Mhm.
allow in the trucking business, but it's going to be more private than commercial out there, like working for companies.
Mhm.
So my thing where it changed was um, I was put in a position of transport, but I was helping people, and it's better when you're
Mhm.
supporting people because it's better than freight. I always tease them, freight don't talk to you, but you hear so many testimonies, and they're so grateful that that the temperance and how we care for them and where we're getting them to their appointments. So this part of transportation is way better than what I expected. But everything
Mhm.
comes in together, busing people to shows and all that other stuff. It's a
Yeah.
part of transportation, and it's serving God. So
Wow. 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 So Scott, real quick, we're just gonna shout out some people in the audience here viewing. We got Mr. B Nice. He said, "Hey, that's some good info that you were giving. We appreciate that." And we got Mr. D Nice here, Mr. Dwayne Lewis. He says, "It's life after incarceration, but the system doesn't make it easy for us," and that's totally true. That's totally true. He says it's the life after incarceration, but the system does not make it easy for us. And that's totally true. And that's why there's a lot of organizations, you know, I'm telling y'all right now, there's a lot of organizations that's out there fighting, for the system to get itself correct. As he said, a lot of the system, it doesn't make it easier for a lot of people. We understand that there's guidelines, we understand there's regulations and things like that, but they don't make it easy for a lot of individuals. They're on their backs because, oh, they're expecting them to just get a job right away. They're expecting them to just adapt to the community. They're expecting them to just do all these things that they've been away from and deterred for X amount of years. There's a lot of years that individuals have lost. Sometimes people have to process, certain things being out here. I know I was one of them. There were certain places where I was going to apply for jobs. I walked in there, I see a crowd of people, I walked back out. Why did I walk back out? Because I was a little shook up like that. I wonder if these people are going to judge me. And my thing is, how can they judge you if you never told them anything? How
exactly.
can they view you in a different light if you never opened up your mouth? but that came from me being down years upon years, being an alien from society. So it took time for me to get accustomed. You're like, okay, no, I could walk in here without, intimidating nobody. Yes, I am 6'7", I am African American, but at the same time, I have to be mindful, like, okay, people are going to be a little intimidated by that, but I have to remind myself, you're still a human being.
Right.
And that's what all of us are. So Scott, so by you saying you got into the transportation business, which was a great thing. So now, far as your planning on excelling and going to another level or different realms of levels, what do you find yourself doing like in the next 5 years? Just, it doesn't have to be your exact plan, but what is something you just plan on establishing? I remember you said that you had a house, that was taken, when you were arrested. What are some of your plans or ideas or goals that you want to accomplish yourself?
Well, the thing is, first of all, I have to um, do my due diligence. Attorneys can't help you a lot of times because they're licensed by the state. Their first duty is to the state. Once you learn that, you're going to be a little bit better. It's only hard if you allow them to continue to make it hard. But when you know your rights, okay, you can stand on them and you'll be able to make it a lot easier because they're not used to pushback and they're not pushing back in a bad way. It's just you have a right to defend yourself. Per the Constitution, Bill of Rights, it doesn't matter. So that's number one. So to get more notified that these agencies what they can and cannot do. Helping people that are in the same situation as what I was for foreclosure. A lot of people, or finances are messed up because of these lending institutions. You hold them accountable for, not taking advantage of the consumer. So I'm even in that part of the realm. And most of all, to stop this human trafficking, part B, through the prison system for profitable gain, and they're really not rehabilitating. And we have these correction officers in some states riding around in these high-priced SUVs, which it's being noticed in these private social medias. So I just want to encourage everybody that even the public out there is looking at the acts and what these agencies are doing. So it can be better for all of us to get out there, and those people that are afforded a second chance will have a chance to prosper.
Gotcha. Yeah. So if we can circle back to that question, just more so of personal goals, like, do you see yourself owning a house again? Do you see yourself getting
Absolutely.
back into a trucking business altogether? Have you thought about these things, or do you think that you're content where you are now, or do you see a future?
Absolutely not. 'Cause this is not all there is.
Gotcha.
You know what? It turns out to be fun more than that. Listen, I'm having a good time now. When you get that power and you actually see your wisdom
Yeah.
actually working in your favor, you're going to get pushed back. But it's great because where one door closes, another one opens. I applied for a lot of jobs and they were promising and the doors were shut. And then
Mm.
one day there was a call.
Yeah.
You know what that call was, Keenan?
Wow.
The phone, and I was calling you. You were calling me.
Oh yeah. That was powerful. Yeah, it was powerful. And as you said, and as you just shared, people come into your life, some for a moment, some for a season, some for a lifetime. We got to distinguish which is which. Because I'm telling you, the people that's supposed to be there for a lifetime, you're going to constantly see them uplifting. You're going to constantly see them blessing. You're going to constantly see them, trying to make ways for others, putting themselves before other people. A lot of people don't understand that sometimes people that are around you, they're taken from you. It doesn't have to be something that's monetary, but they're taking your energy. They're taking the vibrations from you. They're taking the spirit from you. They're draining you out. But like you said, there was something, a call came through where we made connections. The next thing you know, it landed, people in better situations. Because like you said, Scott, I was there, and I don't like to use this because this is something I do from my heart. But I was there for a lot of individuals that transition and I helped them get on their feet. But again, I don't get the glory. That's the glory to God. But I help them get on their feet. And again, it's not because, that I just felt as though, I just want to do it so I can throw it in their face. No, it was more so because I had a genuine heart to help somebody. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the reasons why the Reentry Connect podcast was made, to make people aware and be informative of the things that's going on when they are re-entering society. It's to help people on a further reach. That's why we're coming up with the reentry housing. We coming up with people like, hey, you don't have to go through that halfway house stuff. You could come to housing, understand what it is to transition slowly, get your job, set your bank account up, establish your credit, get these things situated. Because I tell people all the time, these are things that's going to establish you in life. Life is always a serious thing. So that's why I'm appreciating you, Scott, for coming on to this podcast and sharing your experiences and showing that there is a way, there is hope for people that's in the same boat.
Yeah.
Mr. D. Lewis says here, he says some probation parole officers causes confusion with you as strive to work and to keep the job. They tell you to come in during work hours instead of planning a day around your work. Says, but expect you to maintain employment. I have employees that faces the challenges often. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's probably a big issue that you hear, at least in Pennsylvania, but I know in other states as well, where people will be on parole. The next thing you know, they're telling them, oh, don't go into work, come into the office so you can report. How is that fair? How do you expect somebody to just tell their boss, hey, you got to go ahead, I got to go to the parole office because it's way more important than my employment. It's way more important than keeping the roof over my head. It's way more important than keeping food, in my refrigerator. And that's the type of struggle. Again, collateral consequences, things that's prohibiting us from doing the right thing, the certain things, that we deem normal for society in the normal way of living, but the collateral consequences again. But we appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, Scott. So I know we're coming up on time right here, but without further ado, Scott, if you could encourage individuals right now, that's watching, viewers from in prison, viewers that are in the halfway house right now, viewers that are on all these platforms, if you could encourage them right now, what would you say to them about re-entering society?
What I want to say is don't go by what it looks like. Don't go on false reports of other inmates. Know what is there for you. You know the desires in your heart and what you need to do. We all know what's right and what's wrong. So I encourage you to gravitate to those people that are supporting you, that can help you, because a lot of things, you can do some things alone, but you're not created to do things alone. So that's why even outside of the trucking, what I'm going to be doing is, and us here at GPS, we want to, make the transition easier where we have houses that you can come to, know what to expect, and actually maybe even have your grants ready for you to go out into the workforce and not feel like you're in prison, but it'll just make the transition easy where you can go out and get a job and you'll have your housing and you'll have your 6 months to get cash together so you can move forward and not look back and go back to where you've been,
Powerful.
because that's the end. So that's what we're working on. Truck and hauling freight doesn't talk to you. you give the customer their product. But when you plan into someone's life and they can be an asset and give back to the community, that's even better than hauling freight. So that's where I'm at right now. I think that's why God used that,
That's
because
what's up.
that I could do that to
And,
help.
and
And
and that's what it's all about. Now here it is, Scott. You went through the prisons. You occupied your mind correct way. You were released. You didn't give up. You searched for employment. You searched for your housing, and all these things came to you. You still didn't give up, even though it still was a challenge. The next thing you know, something happened that landed you into an even better predicament because you faded not.
yes,
You were rewarded due to your endurance.
yes. Whoa.
You see what I'm saying? And it's powerful because some people just expect a job to just come. I'm gonna just be in a certain position, hurry up and get back. And sometimes it's hard to get because like you said, Scott, you already were living life
Yes.
before you were arrested. So here it is. When you came out, you see how complicated it was to even try to get back. Because we done lost a lot of years, so you lost a lot of things. You lost a lot of time. You lost a lot of material things. Yeah, material things don't mean anything, but material things do mean a lot when you need a roof over your head. Material things do mean a lot when you need clothes on your back. You know, so I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you sharing everything that you've been through because it's giving people hope right now. And Mr. D said, he said, I would like to say stay positive and connect with positive people. Absolutely. And that's what we're going to do. But without further ado, Scott, here it is once again on the Reentry Podcast, always light at the end of the tunnel. We appreciate you coming on, Scott, you holding it down and really supporting us. I really thank you, and I want you to constantly keep your head up, you keep pushing forward, and you keep spreading the word, and you keep helping people. Always extend that help. Just because, again, even if I help people, whatever the case may be, it's always good deed to pass it on to other people. If people don't want your help, you dust your feet and you keep it moving. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely, I'm proud of you. Like I said, I've seen you from the prisons to coming out to establishing yourself and really getting involved out here. I really appreciate that. But we're going to end it for tonight because it's getting a little late. Plus, I'm a little hungry.
Yeah.
I'm a little hungry. I'm hungry. Yeah, I mean, but we appreciate it. You know what I mean? I appreciate you bringing that information, Scott. It's really going to be viable. Again, Reentry Connect podcast. Until next time, we hope to see y'all soon. You know what I mean? So, all right, without further ado.